Last week, we got a little bit of a preview of Donald Trump's general election campaign strategy, and specifically how he'll be attacking Joe Biden when he retweeted an admittedly hilarious fake ad about Joe Biden, where he basically makes fun of him for being in cognitive decline. Now, I don't think it's funny that Joe Biden is in cognitive decline. I think it's sad and a little bit mean, quite frankly, to, have him run for president. His family should have stepped in and told him, no, you're not fit to do this currently. But I mean, the story that Biden was telling about hairy legs, that's just funny, right? So we all knew that Donald Trump would be weaponizing this story and capitalizing on this obvious disadvantage that Joe Biden has. But the problem for Donald Trump is that he also has a disadvantage. And, when you prime people to think about mental fitness, they're not just going to think about whether or not Joe Biden is mentally fit enough to govern, but they're going to think about you as well. And Donald Trump constantly puts his foot in his mouth and reminds us of how stupid he is as well. So he may not lose his train of thought, but he's a genuinely stupid person, and he keeps reminding us of this over and over again. And an example that we're all talking about, of course, is when he suggested that maybe, injecting disinfectants into our bodies can possibly cure COVID-19. Now, I know that most of you have already seen this clip. It's been beaten to death by the media, but I haven't talked about it yet on the show, and I've seen it like a bajillion times, and it's still funny. Like, I still find this hilarious. So we're going to play this clip one last time, just so there's no room for obfuscation, so people can't accuse me of taking him out of context, not that I care. But this is what Donald Trump said as, possible cures for COVID-19. Take a look.
So, supposing we hit the body with a tremendous, whether it's ultraviolet or just very powerful light, and I think you said that hasn't been checked, but you're going to test it. And then I said, supposing you brought the light inside the body, which you can do either through the skin or in some other way. And I think you said you're going to test that too. Sounds interesting.
Get the right folks who could.
Right, and then I see the disinfectant where it knocks it out in a minute, 1 minute. And is there a way we can do something like that by injection inside or almost a cleaning? Because you see it gets on the lungs and it does a tremendous number on the lungs. So it'd be interesting to check that. So that you're going to have to use medical doctors with. But it sounds interesting to me. So we'll see. But the whole concept of the light, the way it kills it in 1 minute, that's.
Think about how stupid you'd have to be to seriously say something like that. He's literally inquiring about if we clean the insides of our bodies with disinfectant, whether or not that can, cure us of COVID-19 if we have it. How stupid do you have to be to say something like that? To have that thought cross your mind? You have to have such a low IQ that obviously you should not be anywhere near the White House. But the fact that this dipshit is our president is honestly concerning. Now, what I love is that after we all just very clearly heard him suggest that, maybe we should possibly look into injecting disinfectant into our bodies, literally, right-wing propagandists, right on cue, rushed to defend him, suggesting, maybe the left were just taking him out of context, or they're arguing also that, he never technically suggested that people should inject themselves with bleach. Rather, he just said, it's something that maybe we should look into. But anyone who tried to defend him in right-wing media immediately looked more silly than they usually looked, because Donald Trump came out and contradicted them, their defenses of him specifically, by saying, no, I said it. It's just that, I was being sarcastic. Now, you heard his tone. We just watched the video. He was not being sarcastic. Nonetheless, that's his defense, after he kind of doubles down.
Maybe there is something to light and the human body and helping people that are dying, okay?
But just to clarify that, sir, are you encouraging you're not encouraging Americans to...
No, of course. That was, interior-wise, it said sarcastically. It was put in the form of a question to a group of extraordinarily hostile people, namely the fake news media. Okay.
Some doctors felt they needed to clarify that after your
of course, all they had to do is see it was just, the way it was asked. I was looking at you.
I
know.
You were looking at Dr. Burke.
What's that?
You were looking at Dr. Burke.
I was looking at Bill. I was looking at the doctor. I was looking at some of the reporters.
Please. Does anyone believe that he was being sarcastic? No, he's a genuinely stupid person with a low IQ who was inquiring about whether or not it'd be effective to inject our bodies with disinfectants. I mean, this is a guy who seriously asked why we can't nuke hurricanes. This is someone who talked about big water, how Puerto Rico is surrounded by big water. He's a stupid person. So for anyone to rush to defend him, it shows that they're nothing more than political hacks. They're just playing on a team. Now, this story, it's funny, right? I laughed at this story. I genuinely laughed when he said this because of all the potential meme value, and it's stupid. But this genuinely should scare us all. Like, once the dust settled and the laughter went away, this really is unsettling. This is the person who's in charge of the country, and it's not the only stupid thing that he's said or done lately. Because, first of all, in response to the shortage of personal protective equipment healthcare workers across the country desperately need, he said that was fake news and that they're loaded up and there's no shortage. Okay, that's not true. I personally know people who work in healthcare who have told me about how there is a shortage of PPE. So for him to just cry fake news, like, he's trying to do damage control so he doesn't look incompetent, so he looks responsive, and that, oh, we loaded up, but you didn't correct this issue. If you want to get credit for correcting this issue, then correct the fucking issue. Don't just say you did when we can verify that you didn't. Now, additionally, he threatened to veto relief bills that contained emergency funding for the U.S. Postal Service as funding for it dries up. So that's great. And when it comes to his Attorney General, William Barr, well, I think that this Vanity Fair headline says it all. Barr threatens legal action against states for keeping people under quote-unquote house arrest. The Attorney General praised Trump's commonsensical approach to reopening the economy and issued a warning to governors who, quote, impinge on either civil rights or on the national commerce by refusing to lift their stay-at-home orders. So just stop and think about this for a moment. His Attorney General is equating stay-at-home orders to house arrest. We are experiencing a pandemic. The way that we get through this is with social distancing and self-quarantine, okay? That's what we do. It's not going to last forever. It is frustrating, admittedly. But to say something like this, what is he doing? He's throwing red meat to his base. He's essentially legitimizing the anti-quarantine protesters, one of which, by the way, who led the protests, tested positive for COVID-19. Shocker. So that's what you're doing, and this is irresponsible. And you're tacitly endorsing the idea that maybe people should go back to work, we should reopen the economy, and people should die for capitalism. Now, they wouldn't say this explicitly. They wouldn't say that that's their intention, but as he put it, we shouldn't let the cure be worse than the virus itself. He said that before the smart people presumably got to him and told him that this was a terrible decision, because you can't just choose between sacrificing people's lives and the economy. That's not the way that things works. Life is way more complicated than that. So you can't just save the economy by sending everyone back to work. If lots of people die, that hurts the economy. Now, we've lost more than 50,000 American citizens. That is a lot of people who died under his watch. And rather than trying to take responsibility and be a leader for a second, he's making it worse. He's trying to encourage them to violate these types of stay-at-home orders by having his Attorney General say, this is like house arrest. Maybe you shouldn't listen because your civil liberties are being violated. And this comes after Donald Trump condemned Georgia for reopening some businesses, like gyms and barbershops and whatnot. So, either Trump directed him to do this when, he's saying something else. Maybe there's just no communication within Trump's administration. But this is deeply dangerous. We need one unified message to come from Trump's administration. But as we see his response here to COVID-19, this isn't even arguably the worst part about what he's doing. Because as we deal with a pandemic, to remind you, a lot of us urged political officials to push for the easing of sanctions on countries like Venezuela and Iran. But what did his administration do? They imposed new sanctions on Iran in late March, which is without question going to kill thousands of Iranian lives. Because even though you can't necessarily dictate that medical supplies be sanctioned, indirectly they're going to be affected. You're cutting the supply of medical supplies in an indirect manner. This will hurt them, this will kill people. But on top of that, what he's doing now should infuriate every single person in America. He's trying to ramp up and start a war with Iran. Here's what he tweeted out recently about Iran. Quote, I have instructed the United States Navy to shoot down and destroy any and all Iranian gunboats if they harass our ships at sea. Now, as Aaron Rupar pointed out, he put out this tweet after Fox News talked about this. They claimed that at the same time Iran bragged about its Navy's capabilities, that they also sent out these gunboats to harass U.S. warships that were stationed in the Persian Gulf. Here's the clip in question that likely encouraged the tweet that we saw from Donald Trump.
Yeah, the website says it's successful this time, though. At the same time, Iran is bragging about the Navy's capabilities. Just last week, armed Iranian boats were caught on camera performing dangerous maneuvers around our warships in the Persian Gulf, you remember. Let's bring in Congressman Michael Watts from...
Now, you saw the ships, like they played the video, so I guess that the dangerous maneuvers that they were committing were just piloting their boats too close to a U.S. warship. But here's another question. Why are U.S. warships in the Persian Gulf? They're not trying to intimidate us. We're trying to intimidate them. Why are our warships in the Persian Gulf if not to intimidate them? This is crybullying 101, where we're claiming to be the victims. They're the ones who are supposedly being aggressive when you just said that we're in the Persian Gulf. Get out. We don't have any business being there. Get out. We don't need to be patrolling the Persian Gulf. Bring those warships home. We don't need to be there. Second of all, another question that needs to be asked is, why is the president saber-rattling against any country during a global pandemic? Like, I don't care what country it is. Why are you escalating tensions, saber-rattling, when your number one priority should be getting us through this pandemic? Donald Trump is not just an idiot. That's the point of this story. Like, we can laugh at how stupid he is and maybe how dangerous this is for him to suggest that people should inject their bodies with Lysol spray or Clorox or whatever. But he is a dangerous idiot. His idiocy crosses that line. It's not just something that we can laugh at and say, oh, Donald Trump said something stupid. Like, his stupidity as the president has consequences. Very, very broad consequences. Like, during a pandemic, he's trying to start a war with Iran. He's the president. And his stupidity is going to hurt a lot of people. I feel a greater sense of responsibility as the host of a podcast on YouTube than Donald Trump feels as president of the United States. Because people take what you have to say seriously. Like, if you're a leader and an influencer of any kind, they take what you say to heart. Now, for him to ask something like that on its face is so stupid. It shows you why he's incapable of leading this country at any time, but this time especially, he is not capable. And if we get through COVID-19, when we get through COVID-19, it's not going to be because of what he does. It'll be in spite of what he does, because throughout the course of this process, he has been unquestionably unhelpful, to say the least.
Mike is the worst progressive on YouTube. Please don't subscribe to him or become a patron. David Dole is so much better. Trust me, folks, he's doing a great job. He really is, okay?